the conference in these opening sessions are also part of this community. So it is my pleasure to thank all of them and to start this session welcoming Professor Chris McConville, Deputy Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Research and Innovation in the College of Science, Engineering and Health of RMIT University. Thank you very much for hosting us in Melbourne and welcoming us in your university.
Thank you, Lewis, for that. Well, good morning, everyone, and honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to RMIT University here in the very heart of Melbourne. For those of you who are visiting from overseas, welcome to Australia. I'd like to begin with these proceedings today with an acknowledgement of country, acknowledging the people of the Wurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations, on whose unceded lands we conduct the business of the university, and respectfully acknowledge their ancestors and elders, past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians and their ancestors of the lands and waters across Australia, where we also conduct the business of the university. So Wominjeka, which is welcome in the traditional language of the traditional owners of these lands. As a representative of the Vice-Chancellor of RMIT University, it's my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you, each and every one of you, to RMIT. Executives, keynote speakers, presenters and delegates of the 12th International Conference on the Theory and Practice of Electronic Governance. This year's conference is the latest in the series of conferences that began in Macau in 2007. The ICEGOV conferences have from the very beginning been coordinated by the United Nations University, and this year's conference was suggested by RMIT Europe as an initiative to bring it to Melbourne for the first time. As with the last three conferences in Galway, New Delhi and Montevideo, the 2019 conference will continue to explore the theory and practice of electronic governance and digital transformation in the world around us. ICEGOV creates a quite unique link between the worlds of research and policy, worlds that are too often kept apart. However, it's clear that both are essential for the proper development and application of effective electronic governance. This year, the focus of the conference is exploring digital government synergies to foster equality, inclusiveness and productivity. Now, speaking personally, while I'm often asked to open conferences and meetings, most of which I know very little about the subject matter, I'm a physicist. The subject here for this particular meeting and the ideals of equality and inclusiveness are two core values that are firmly embedded in the very fabric of everything we do here at RMIT. One of the core pillars of our research activities are the enabling capability platforms. These are interdisciplinary activities across the university, each led by an internationally recognised academic, focused on bringing together researchers from across engineering, the physical sciences, medical sciences, along with designers, social scientists and policymakers, to innovate and translate our research into real-world applications. These include activities being carried out in global business innovation, social change, urban futures, and information and systems, the latter combining big data and engineering with policies and governance, a very major issue these days. RMIT has continually positioned itself to be the university that has industry and applied research at its very heart, and it is this that gives us our distinctive position in higher education and is a key contributor to Australia PLC from our point of view. This can be demonstrated by last week's ERA results in the Excellence in Australia and Research Australia. The embedding of industrial collaboration and partnership is also a feature of our teaching and is both research-led and industry-driven, making our graduates very highly prized. I was particularly interested to see that for this year's conference there is an addition of an industry forum along with the invited and academic forums from the past. Having looked through the programme for the next 3 days, there looks to be an excellent selection of speakers both from Australia and from across the world, and a fascinating range of interrelated topics across electronic governance. Starting with Mr. Randall Bruchot, the CEO of the Digital Transformation Agency, who will deliver the opening keynote lecture. So finally, I hope you all enjoy the conference here in Melbourne. It looks to be an excellent programme and an excellent session, certainly starting with today. And over the next 3 days, there's a lot of subjects which I think are interlinked and interrelated, and I think are very, very relevant to the world we live in today. So again, welcome to RMIT University, welcome to Australia, if you're new, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
It is my pleasure now to call Professor Elsie Stives. Elsa is not only a professor in several Argentinian universities, as I remember well, but also she was one of the founders of UNU-EGOV, and she's the present director, president, coordinator, whatever, of the steering committee of ICEGOV. Thank you, Elsa.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you. Good morning. So, Mr. Randall Bruchot, ICEGOV 2019 Conference Chair and Chief Executive Officer of the Digital Transformation Agency, Government of Australia. Professor Chris McConville, ICEGOV 2019 Chair and Deputy Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation in the College of Science, Engineering and Health at RMIT University. Professor Luis Barbosa, Deputy Head of United Nations University Operating Unit on Policy-Driven Electronic Governance. Ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues, on behalf of the ICEGOV Steering Committee, warm welcome to ICEGOV 2019. We are delighted that 12 years after the start of the ICEGOV series, the conference finally arrived in Australia. Thus, we established our presence in 5 continents and reconfirmed our claim that ICEGOV is truly a global conference. In these opening words, I would like to reflect on the meaning of the conference theme, exploring digital government synergies to foster equality, inclusiveness, and productivity, and particularly on 3 keywords used in this theme: equality, inclusiveness, and productivity. So let me start first with equality. When the UN member states committed in 2015 to pursuing Sustainable Development Goals, they committed to reducing inequality within countries. This entails the implementation of policies and programs aimed at the delivery of public services in health, education, welfare, and other areas for all. Today, such services fully rely on digital technologies and digital innovation. Second, inclusiveness. At the time of sharp political divides and calls for self-determination from societies around the world, governments cannot afford to ignore such calls. They need to listen and moderate discussions about public affairs, shape political agendas to respond to uncover needs, and secure the digital space for such discussions, free from hate speech, fake news, and political manipulation. Securing the public space requires regulation, education, and awareness, all based on sound information ethics. Third, productivity. At the time of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and articulated social needs, we face the challenge of conceiving new development paths where economic development, social well-being, and environmental protection work side by side. Enabled by digital platforms from the bottom and locally appropriated sustainability policies from the top, they realize parts of socio-technical systems that we are increasingly part of. In conclusion, government and its transformation into digital governments are key enablers for society to pursue a more equal, inclusive, and productive future. This is the vision that brought us here together: academics, policymakers, and practitioners from different parts of the world, working together to advance the state of the art in digital government and its contribution to sustainable development. I wish you very inspiring discussions, meeting old and new friends, and spending a very pleasant time in Melbourne. Enjoy the conference. Warm welcome.
It's time now to hear the conference shares of this ICEGOV edition. We'll start with a video record message by Dr. David Malone, Director of the United Nations University and Under Secretary General of the United Nations. Dr. Malone was not able to come for very pressing reasons, but he was keen to send us this message, and I invite you to listen to him.
Welcome. My name is David Malone. I would love to be with you. Unfortunately, I'm recording this message in Tokyo because I'm required at UN headquarters at the time, UNU headquarters, at the time the conference takes place. My career has been in government service, business, nonprofit, and academic worlds. And in all of those worlds, a slow-moving phenomenon has marked our times, and that slow-moving phenomenon is the takeoff of actual development in the developing world in the last 3 decades, after many false starts in the 60s, 70s, and some of the 80s. It's very exciting. And information technologies for development and in the developing world have greatly facilitated both more efficient government and also have greatly accelerated the business model transformations of a number of companies, voluntary organizations, and others in the developing world. E-governance, electronic governance, has become a central issue for a number of major countries in the world. 2 years ago, the ICEGOV conference met in New Delhi. At the time, a major transformation in how the Indian government delivers services to its citizens, increasingly through electronic transfers, was underway. It's progressed further since then. And the same is happening, or beginning to happen, all over Africa, parts of Asia that hadn't until now been alert to the potential of electronic governance mechanisms, and Latin America as well. Needless to say, the industrialized countries have been benefiting from these technologies the longest of all. We're delighted that our group of colleagues who sit in a beautiful Baroque town of northern Portugal called Guimarães have convened this conference with local allies and all of you. The UN University was created in 1972 and opened its doors in 1975 to work primarily as a research institution, a large think tank, if you will, on some of the principal dimensions of the challenges facing developing countries. And we have remained true to that vocation. And where we have graduate students, the majority of them mostly come from the developing world, and we're proud of this. And when they need financial support to do so, and they are competitive, we look very hard for that financial support, and in most cases, it is available. It's an exciting mission the UN University has, and in recent years we have added to our activities the ambition of supporting, seeking to influence in some cases, the work of the United Nations itself. The Secretary General of the United Nations, as you all know, is the ultimate tech buff within the organization. He saw what it could do for countries when he was Prime Minister of Portugal, not so very long ago. As High Commissioner for Refugees, he also saw how various forms of advanced technology could help in the work of that vital organization, often in some of the most challenging environments in the world. A year ago, he launched a high-level panel on digital cooperation, and he has been developing a new strategy of his own in this area. And several of my colleagues based in New York and elsewhere have worked with his team thereon, and one of UNU's council members sits on the high-level panel. You might wonder what place the SDGs and Agenda 2030 make for the technological revolution we are undergoing. In fact, if you think of the SDGs individually and most of the targets, many of the indicators, in fact, technological platforms are vital to them. But perhaps the one most empowered by technological progress is SDG 16, which speaks of justice, of security, and of strong institutions. In countries without very significant financial means, electronic means can be a multiplier for stronger institutions, including but not confined to institutions of governance. The nonprofit world, the volunteer world is greatly empowered also, and business has been revolutionized by new technologies. ICEGOV is a meeting that has been taking place now since, I believe, 2007. I believe this is the 11th iteration of the conference, so it occurs roughly once every year. It derived from work within UNU's Research Institute in Macau, known mainly for gambling, but actually a fantastic place at the heart of Asia to work on these issues. And the team responsible for its e-governance work moved to Portugal only a couple of years ago. Yours is a multi-stakeholder event involving academics, of course, researchers who are not academics but active in this field, including civil society, and those in government committed to progress, primarily in the developing world, on these issues. A multi-stakeholder conference, in my experience, is always more exciting than a single constituency conference because there is so much we can learn from each other, and the different approaches, different sectors of our societies and economies adopt to utilizing, exploiting, in a sense, technological innovation. Once again, I'm really sorry not to be with you. Although I was brought up a Canadian, my mother was Australian. It's a country I love. I think you're very fortunate to be meeting in Melbourne. Even though my mother was from Sydney, I still have grown to love Melbourne. I wish you all good fortune for this conference. I want to congratulate the e-governance team, a very young team, a very dynamic team led by Delfina Soares, who you all know. And I want to thank all of you who, through your participation, encourage their work. Good luck with it, and bravo to the eGov team.